Hi everyone, welcome back to Membrain. Today our guest is David Mendes, as known as PapaPhD. David lives in Canada and he has a cool backstory. He went all the way through the PhD and then he decided that academia was not his final stop. Now, David runs a PapaPhD podcast where he chats about the life after the thesis, the diverse and impactful roles scientists can play beyond the lab. I heard about David through a person that knows both of us, but is not even into science. When I heard about him, I started listening to some of his episodes. And David talks to all these experts and inspiring people and share these amazing stories and tips. So I am really excited to chat with him today here. And I think we all have a lot to learn from him. So let's get started and meet David. Hi, David.
Hi, Carolina. I'm happy to be here, and thanks for having me on Membrain, and thanks for the kind words. And I hope that I can share something that your audience will appreciate. And yes, it is funny that someone that's like unrelated to science or research was our point of contact. It's Inês Moura, right?
Yeah, he's Nijmor, yeah. A vocal coach who I work with to improve my communication skills, and she mentioned you many times, and then I started listening to your podcast and I was like, okay, yeah, actually a lot of what you do is a lot of are many things that I relate. So I like the fact that you have episodes where you discuss important things related to science and more than science. So what's next? What to do next? And sometimes we struggle. And
Mhm.
actually, I'm kind of in that moment struggling a bit about what's next. So I think that what you do is very important for people that lives works in academia.
Well, thank you. I hope it helps the community. And actually, Inês Moura was on an episode of the show talking precisely about voice, and because one of the things that I've identified while talking with people about what happens after leaving academia and after leaving graduate school specifically is people, especially if they change domains, they have trouble finding their voice. And so someone again, another guest of the show told me about Ines, and I ended up interviewing her specifically on that. So if voice and finding your voice is something that you're trying to work on, you can go on Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD. You can look for it on Spotify and look for the episode on voice with Inês Moura.
Yeah. So, and but David, let's go
Yes.
back from the
Yes.
beginning. So, do you want to share with us a bit about your background, what led you to the world of science, and
Mhm.
then to the transition,
Yeah. Well,
getting out?
like, getting into science, I think, started a long time ago. I've always been a curious kid. I remember I was the type of kid who had a collection of bones, of animal bones that I would find as a kid before university. And I always liked solving puzzles, and I was good at that type of thing. I always liked the life sciences. Those types of classes always were of interest, and I had some sort of um, how can I say ease of understanding those concepts, and again feeding into the curiosity of understanding more and more. Eventually, I did a licenciatura, which is a degree with which now it has
Bachelor
become,
degree,
yeah,
undergrad.
bachelor's. Now it's equivalent because of the Barcelona agreement. It's become, because it was a 5 year degree, it has become equivalent to a master's.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
uh
3 plus 2, which is a total of
exactly.
5. Yeah.
And I did mine at the University of Lisbon, in microbiology and genetics. Those were great years. So of course, going into university and into biology and microbiology and genetics, that reinforced, kind of oriented me towards that side of things, but also reinforced my love for science. And then What happened is that after those 5 years, I didn't go right away into graduate school.
Okay.
The first thing I that happened was because I wasn't ready to take that step right away. So I went into the job market, and I found my first job was actually really related to communication. And it's funny because now I what I do is medical writing. One of the things I do is medical writing, so writing for pharma, for anything biomedical. And the first job I got out of my degree, of the bachelor's and of the licenciatura, was um, communicating data on generic drugs in Portugal to doctors around the country. So it was me and 15 other people.
Mm-hmm.
We were hired by Infarmed, which
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's the Portuguese pharma agency, and because there was a big push from the government to bring generic drugs into the country, and their strategy was to get uh, young people with scientific backgrounds, to train them and give these presentations and discuss these data, because there was some resistance from the community. Anyway, it's funny because I at the
Interesting.
time, it was really out of my comfort zone, because I'm mostly shy, and even, like, introverted. So that was my first, like, thing that pushed me way outside of my comfort zone, and
Okay.
and something that I'm really grateful for, and that I think has to do with why now I'm doing a podcast, and I'm presenting at events, and I'm speaking, etc., etc. It was that first job out of university kind of broke the seal of that type of things for me. Imagine going in front of doctors, right?
No, no, it's scary. A shy
It was
person
totally
talking
scary.
with doctors, like and selling, like you're showing why they should prescribe this drug instead of other drug. And I don't think that's
you
easy job. That's
you
not
can
easy.
only imagine, right? So that was my first year after the undergrad, and then I someone who was part of that team, hi well, actually approached me to go teach lab at there's private universities in Lisbon, and one of them is called is Lusófona, and they have
Hmm.
this medical science school that's not in the main campus. It's called Escola Superior de Saúde Ribeiro Sanches,
Hmm.
and they needed teachers for a lab, biochemistry lab, cell biology lab. And then I did that for a year, and
Okay.
then I was like, okay, I'd really like to teach the science, to teach not just the lab but the courses. And what's needed for that? You need a PhD to be a professor.
Hmm.
And then, of course, now today I'm not a professor, but that was what kind
The-
of projected me, and or launched me into, okay, let's see what's out there in terms of PhD programs that are interesting to me. And the rest is history. I got into the BEB PhD program in Coimbra, from the neuroscience is centered there, the CNC. And after that first year of courses, I visited a few labs around the world, and I chose Montreal. And now I'm here. Now I'm a Canadian Montrealer, and I'm not a professor, and I'm not in the lab anymore, but I'm really close to the community. And one of the ways that I'm close is through this podcast, Papa PhD, that now is called Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD. Does that kind of sum it up in a in a,
No,
in
no,
a nice
yes,
way?
and it is actually very interesting because so I didn't start my PhD like right away, like right after my master's. So when
Okay.
it's kind of similar. So when I finished my master's, I was like, okay, I want to start working a bit and see what I want to do next.
Hmm.
And I kept working in research
Okay.
for 2 years, and then I was like, okay, if I want to keep working in research in science, the PhD is the next step. And I was like, and I wanna see how it is outside. I wanna go to different country and see how it is.
Hmm.
And that's when I decided to come to England. I saw this PhD and I applied for it and I got it. It was amazing. And
Hmm.
actually, I think it's kind of like like you were saying in the beginning, you wanted your lab, you wanted to keep working in the lab and teaching. So then you did your PhD. But then after your PhD, you were like, maybe I don't want to be a professor. And it's kind of what's happening with me again, which is actually very interesting. So I think that you are a really interesting guest because you can help me with what's next.
Yeah,
So basically,
with
you
pleasure.
so basically you finished your PhD, and then you were like, I don't want to be a professor.
Exactly.
What should I do?
Yeah, there were many things. So I don't want to be a professor. I don't want to move now. I had my partner and we were expecting our first child. I don't want to start the whole do postdocs and move countries thing. That was also another thing. But yeah, I I I didn't. I didn't see myself going into that career. And the first thing I did was to start networking as well as I could, with because without having prepared a professional network in the years coming, going in the years leading to me getting my degree. And that's one of the things that I'm always, one a message that I'm hammering on all the time is start working on your professional network at least by year 2 of your PhD, so that when you get to the end, you have this network of contacts and these possibilities that you can already explore fairly quickly. I had to figure everything out after my thesis was accepted, and and it was a bit stressful, but
Very
I did end
stressful.
up, yeah, I did end up being able to just it's funny because friends and family, I found my first job tutoring, again tutoring, giving lab classes, distance, in distance education for 9-ish months. But then I kept looking at what was out there in terms of jobs, 9 to 5 uh, jobs, that people who were at the lab with me, what that they were doing around me here in Montreal. And I found out about medical writing, and I found out as two people that had been doing their masters, in neighboring labs, were now in this agency, and they were doing something called medical writing, which I had no idea what it was. Uh, yeah, go ahead.
So basically, this transition was not so clear in your
Mm-mm.
mind, and when you were looking for jobs after your thesis was submitted, and you were doing like that tutoring, but it was supposed to be something temporary. It
Hmm.
sounds maybe in your mind when you were looking for like what I want to do next. That that's the answer was not clear, and
Not
you
at
were
all.
like just searching and see what's happening outside the world on the world, and see what's the chances you have, or what would you like, because that's actually, I think that's really hard. How do you find the kind of job that you like? Because how do you know that that job is something that you like,
Hmm.
or the type of companies or industries, or I don't know. Because the feeling that I have is that we, I did my university degree, right? I went to the university, I did the master's. So all the conversations are basically around academia, postdocs, after the postdoc, or keep working in a lab in an industry. So, but it's kind of around this, or maybe like the some um, being kind of working in the media, but more related to science. But
Hmm.
this is kind of a very short option. What I was seeing was like kind of very short number of options,
Hmm.
and now that I finished, I still struggle with the same. That is,
Hmm.
I know the easiest way to find a job, because I know if I want to keep working in academia, I know how to apply for postdocs.
Of
I
course.
know what postdocs are, I know what's after the postdoc, but I don't know outside of this bubble. I don't know what's going on. And
Yeah.
it's so hard to understand how can I put my skills and do something that I like in an unrelated area.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't know if you also struggle with this,
Oh
and
yeah.
what did you do? It's like a trial and error thing, like scientists do.
Well, trial and error, like again. So one of my big points in talking about this is going to be and of course you are, you and me, we are at this point of time and we can't go back and change things in the past. But what you don't want to do, if you're listening and you're in the middle of your PhD, you don't want to wait until after you're done and then you say, okay, now I'm done with all of that, of the research, and now I can focus on finding where I'm going to fit in the job market for different reasons. First, and I'm going to answer your question, but one of the
Hmm.
reasons why you don't want to do that is, for example, if you're talking with people and they feel that that you want something out of them, which is a job, it doesn't make for great conversations, because there's this transactionality to the conversation. So again, if you're listening, and if you can, here's the strategy that you need to follow. And it's kind of, let's say it's kind of, if you were able to project yourself into another universe where you're doing something different, but you do it in this way. Instead of having this sci-fi experience of living another life, you're going to look for people who are 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ahead of you, that have the same profile, but that are in the job market. And it's easy now to go into LinkedIn and find people, who have PhD in their tagline, in their name, and see where they are, and to filter to get people who are not in academia, for example. So, um, what I want to kind of sum up really quickly is, you cannot uh, you cannot have a time traveling machine, etc., but you can talk to people who have traveled a path that's similar to yours. And so that would be my key advice. Find people who are out there, who are not in academia, who did a PhD in your domain or in similar domains, and you can find a bunch of them in the Beyond the Thesis podcast, by the way. um, and try to see how they present themselves. Try to understand what type of company or industry they're in, and this is the key thing: reach out to them and say, "Hey, I'm Carolina. I'm David. I'm really, I'm finishing this PhD in this domain, and I'm really inspired. I'm really surprised that you are in this space of industry or of business. And I'd really like to just spend 15, 20 minutes talking with you and asking you some questions, because I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my degree and with my career." And that's it. That's, if you're able to do this once a month, starting from the middle of your PhD, I can assure you that you'll get to the end of your PhD already having this kind of almost 3D map of, okay, this I like, this is interesting, that person really inspiring, and maybe even already you're going to have had conversations that may already be leading to you having a first job after your degree.
Yeah, actually, yesterday I was listening to one of your episodes with Fiona.
Yes,
Fiona, and
Fiona Robinson.
it's kind of what happened with her as well. So,
Exactly.
but from what I understand, when I listen to people like Fiona, like you, a lot of times how do they describe this transition or the opportunities is something like, I was lucky that I stumbled into this person.
Hmm.
But I don't know if this is just lucky, because we kind of have to work to do something to be lucky, right?
Yeah.
To
You
and Sorry.
Well, it's interesting. There's always a part of luck in everything.
Hmm.
In the granular detail of things, there are serendipities. You meet someone in an elevator, etc., etc. But one thing is certain, you can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket. So if you don't start getting a little bit outside of your close network and talking to other people, the luck won't just appear and bring you someone, in front of you, that'll open a whole vista of careers to you. So there's an aspect of luck, but it's like, there's another expression, and now I don't remember it exactly, but it's kind of, luck is luck. luck
We
smiles
work to
on
have luck. Oh,
yeah,
yeah. So.
luck smiles on those who were prepared for it, basically.
Yeah.
So you need to build this like fertile ground of network, and I know networking is a word that's overused and that's not appreciated by everyone, but it is key to this, is
Mm-hmm.
knowing, getting to know people, and having this kind of um, tenuous but real connection to different spaces, and being known also by these people so they
Mm-hmm.
can think of you whenever they see a professional opportunity. And and where luck comes is that in the detail of how things happen. Often, yes, there's an aspect of luck, or you were at the right place at the right time. um you know but that people often we mention it because it's also, it doesn't feel right to take all the credit for, oh, I did this because I prepared so well. No, there's some part of it that comes from somewhere else or someone else. And I think that's why people and guests often mention this aspect of luck, out of a certain humility, um, but also out of the fact that this is a human experience, and that, yeah, there's only so much we can plan. But if we prepare, whenever opportunity uh, knocks at your door, if you're ready, you can embark on that
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. If you're not ready, it might not materialize in the end. Does this make sense to you?
No, it makes total sense, and I think networking is very important. But as you were also saying that one of advice would be like start talking with people, email people that you like, that have on a career that you admire. Um, but sometimes when people feel a bit lost, we have to overcome this fear of I'm going to talk with someone and say like I am lost,
Hmm.
and that person that has nothing is nothing related to me can say like I am not your father, I am not a psychologist, I cannot help you. It's, even though this is not going to happen always, and probably the percentage of times that this happens is really low, there is this fear, this in our mind,
Oh, yeah.
just with the first step, like I'm going to email someone that person. David, I'm going to be honest, when I email you, I am very informal and I'm not shy. I was never shy. And I just talk with people and I say, I am the kind of person that can send these emails easily.
Hmm. Hmm.
Always with that fear in mind, but I'll do it anyway. So when I emailed you, I thought, okay, he's going to see my email and he's going to think that I'm crazy. That's okay. It's fine. But no, it was a very
Now
positive
here we are.
answer. And here we are recording the podcast. Yeah, that's amazing. That's true. All we have, this is what we have to do, is
Hmm.
to give
Well,
this first step.
I agree. One of the things that I can say is, if someone opens channels for you to reach out to them, you know it's like an invitation. You can take it as, you can take it as an invitation, at least to say, hey, I saw what you're doing, I like it, thumbs up. That maybe it
Yeah.
can be only that. And this means that people who are on LinkedIn, somehow just being there means that they're open to being reached out to. And yeah, this is something that I would have had trouble years ago. I told you I was shy and I'm introverted to a certain extent. um and now I know, like, if someone is on a platform, on a social platform, and has a profile, and is active, they are open for you to, and they may be even flattered if you reach out and you say, hey, by the way, I like what you do. And so this may be uh, a way for someone who is feeling like, oh, am I bugging this person, to say, no, I'm on this platform, this is just natural, I can just reach out. So, but I know exactly what you're saying, and it's a social, it's kind of a social barrier that is sometimes tough to break through. Of I don't know them, they're out there, they feel like important and big, and you feel small. But don't think
Mm-hmm.
about that.
Yeah.
If like you sent me the message through my website, I have this place where I say, hey, if you want to say something, just write me a message here, and you did, and now here we are. So
Yeah,
don't
that's true.
don't be shy about reaching to out to people who somehow open the door for you to reach out, like being on LinkedIn or any other platform. So
Yeah, and you can try, and if the person is not interested, probably won't answer, or if it answers, can say is like,
we're
oh,
busy.
are busy or what. Yeah, that's it. But at least we have to try.
Exactly,
We don't know
exactly.
without trying.
And if you want a trick that someone shared with me, if you want to make it even a little bit easier, look for
Hmm.
people who are alumni from where you are doing your degree, because
Okay.
then you already have a point of
Hmm.
commonality.
Makes
And
sense.
the person will be like, oh yeah, hey, I remember my times at the University of Coimbra. Yeah, and that's already kind of a little bit of you know uh, how do I say, lubricant to make the whole thing go smoother in a certain
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. That's actually a really good idea.
way.
It's easy. Um, switching a bit of topic, like
Yes.
talking about, well, switching kind of talking about your podcast, Papa PhD, which I
Yes.
think that basically is a great name. Because when Ines told me about you, I don't think she told me your name. I think she said like Papa PhD,
And it
but
stuck.
it is a great name, great choice of name. But what I wanted to ask is, what inspired you to start this podcast? So
Mhm.
when did you start? What made you? What triggered you to do it?
So see, there's a bit of serendipity there too. I was talking about serendipity before and luck. Um, so I started in 2019 actually. So this summer it's going to be 5 years old. It's a big a big birthday, a
Hmm.
big milestone.
Hmm.
Um, and what happened again? It was kind of an alignment of planets of sorts, in the sense that a few months before summer of 2019, I was trying to. My parents are in Portugal. My dad wanted me to help him actually be active in his retirement by
Okay.
restarting this small business that he had long ago, but he wanted my help. And I said, okay, I'll drop all of the freelance stuff that I'm doing, and let's try to do this together. But me in Montreal and him in Lisbon. So what ended up happening was that just before the summer, after like 8 months of trying to make it work and me going to Portugal sometimes, etc., it didn't really work the way he had imagined. And so,
Okay.
yeah, for different reasons. But the where the serendipity comes is that I get so we say, okay, we've tried enough. It's not working. Let's stop trying
Hmm.
there's another expression that I don't want to botch, but trying to put more effort into something that's not working. And then this meant that somehow for 2 months, 3 months, I had to resume my freelancing. To tell my clients, hey, I'm back. I'm taking contracts again, but they didn't come all right away, right? It was kind of a gradual thing. And at that same time, I'm on Facebook, I think, and there's a message, a post that pops up that says why you should start your podcast in 2019.
Okay.
And I had time because of what I just said. I had more time than usual. I had some gear. I had a nice microphone that I had used before, for music, for other things. And that message I read through, and I thought, you know what? I've been wanting to share something about this. All the people I know that were doing PhDs around me when I was at McGill University here in Montreal, and that are now entrepreneurs and in 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 the industry, etc. This is it. I'm going to learn how to create a podcast, and then I bought a book that showed exactly how to do it at that time. And
Hmm.
as a good academic, I did my research, planned it, and I said, like, the book said in 3 months you can launch your podcast, and in 3 months I was launching Papa PhD.
Okay.
So, but it was, again, it was, there was a certain luck, or there was a certain coincidence. But the reason why, this is the how, how it materialized at that time. The why is that, so I defended in 2010, and then uh in the repeated points between 2010 and 2019, I was invited to career panels to talk about medical writing and what it was, and etc., etc., and we know, and to talk about careers after the PhD, and all the things that I, at the end of my PhD, that I thought that were only specific to me, like this, not knowing what this stress about not knowing what came next, this kind of feeling of, uh if I'm not following up into a postdoc, I'm kind of failing at this whole academic journey that comes, since high school until today. All negative feelings that I had thought that belonged only to me, I started understanding that no, it's actually widespread. Every panel that I went, some student was going through this, anxiety, difficult feelings about this transition,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah. So this moment of, this is the moment to start a podcast. Right away I thought, I'm going to tell stories on the podcast of people who did something different than stay in the academic track. That was my first idea. Of course, now it's been 5 years, I've had academics on the show, I have had students on the show, so it's kind of expanded a little bit. And now I call it Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD. I've changed the name last year. But the idea originally was to open the curtain on what's really happening, and to kind of normalize the non-academic career journey for people going through graduate school. That was the origin story of the show.
And I think it's very important. And it's very important. I don't think I think it's very important because some of your episodes are related. You have people that are not or that did this transition, and having these testimonials is very important.
Mhm.
Also, in the same way that people that decided to stay in academia,
Of course.
it is also very important. So, what I think is very important is to open all the doors for everyone, so everyone can know all the more options and try and see if they want to change or not, because it's everything all right if you want to stay in academia. We need
Of
that.
course.
It's necessary, it's important. It's everything okay if you want to go outside. And but for us, that we did everything, so at the university, and then we started our studies, and everything is academic related.
Hmm.
Going out, getting out is very like is entering in a gray area. We don't
Exactly.
know
Exactly.
how to, what it is like, what how to do it. So it's good that you in some of your episodes you talk about that.
Yeah,
Well,
and
it's so
through people's stories. So that was the whole concept, was I'm going to show you what this person did, what that person did, what the struggle was, what good practices they've developed to create their career journey, their career path, etc., etc. Yeah,
even advice for people that want to work in academia, people that
exactly.
want to do a PhD, how to apply, or how to do it, how to, and then how to keep working in academia.
Yeah,
It's good to have people from different areas with different career choices
of course.
showing their testimonials to help
Yeah, that's
everyone
the
else
idea.
around. Yeah. So yeah, okay. So basically, so you started your episode because you saw on internet, on Facebook, right?
Yeah,
Or
I think it
no,
was on
yes,
Facebook.
uh, you should start your podcast in 2019. That's amazing. It's
Yeah,
an amazing reason. And then, see, you started with the episode in one episode in mind, and then you well, you added like the options,
yeah.
the
Right,
kind of
right away,
topics.
right away. I had this this group of people that I knew were in in industry, in working solo, in working in science communication. I The first thing that happened was I had this roster of people in front of me that I wanted to come do the first, I
Okay.
don't know, 10 episodes. And then
Mm.
it grew from there. And then and then one guest suggests someone else, and then people start reaching out saying, hey, I have this story, I'd love to tell it on the show.
Okay.
So yeah, it's
So you had
and
the people in mind first.
first was the
So
people.
the
I had like
guests,
10 people,
inspiring
like, let's
people.
say. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so basically, you started your podcast without having a strategy. Like, I don't know, well, how people usually, when we talk about business, people ask, "What's your audience?"
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know about business.
Yeah, no, there was no, actually it's funny because people ask me, "Oh, do you monetize the podcast?" And they've been asking this for years, but for the first 4 years of podcast, it was totally and purely a passion project. I never thought of it as anything but I need to get these stories out there to these people who I know are suffering and who I know are anxious and need some, some light and
Inspiring
some
stories.
hope. That was it. That was it. But with time, and I've put so much effort into it, and I've been evolving the format and making it better and better.
Hmm.
Like building the studio that you see behind me. With time, I started thinking, okay, maybe I could monetize it, and I just started last year having collaborations and sponsors that are now not consistently, but substantially, or yeah, to an important uh, extent, sponsoring special series in the show and things like that. But it's just started now. The first 4 years were fully just this this will of bringing content to a community that I know needs it, and that I know is so busy doing their research that and that they're not, it would be a lot of work for them to explore and meet all these people and do all these interviews, so I'm kind of doing it for them. That was the concept.
It's a really easy way to get to know other people with good experience or with a life experience that can help and guide many others, because um, I have this sensation that usually we just focus on the success part of everyone else, and you think
Hmm.
that, okay, that person is successful, was always successful, that person was born to be successful, and I think, well, that's not true, right?
That's not.
There's a lot of failures in between. There are a lot of mistakes, and I think that we learn with the mistakes.
With the mistakes, yeah.
With the mistakes. So listening to these people and realizing that they were not born successful, they had to go through harsh times. It's very important. It's motivating and makes us feel like, okay, this is normal. We are just going through the process. This person did it this way. I can try this way. That person did it, maybe had a different approach. So we can see different strategies, different approaches, and try maybe select one that we identify better, or just try all of them and see which one works. I don't
Well,
know.
I really believe in this idea of choosing one thing and testing it, and then seeing, does it work for me, I keep it. Does it not work for me, I throw it away. For sure. It's funny that you're talking about failure, because today I published the week's episode of Beyond the Thesis. It's always on Thursdays, and it's a rerun by Mark Reed, and he has written a book on the imposter syndrome, the imposter phenomenon, and he
Mm-hmm.
actually gives training in Europe, I know in the UK, around the imposter phenomenon in academia. But one of the things he said in his interview is, "Oh, I actually keep a CV of failures," and he actually had a link to share. So uh, because for him it was an important. Uh, um, reminder of failure. You know, failures are bricks that are part of this wall that is, let's say, success, and I'm doing air quotes. Failures are part
Mm-hmm.
of it, are part of the human experience, and are part of the academic experience, which is a human one. So it's interesting that you mentioned this, because it's on air today on
It's
the
on air today.
podcast.
Okay, yeah, we'll listen into it. This imposter syndrome. Sometimes
Yes,
I question myself. I don't know your opinion. This is kind of unrelated to what we were supposed to talk about, but
it's fine.
it happens a lot that people say, "Oh, that's the imposter syndrome that is making you feel this way,
Hmm.
not believing in yourself." Okay, it's the imposter syndrome, and now how can I? Okay, if I will sit on my sofa and I'll say, okay, I will fail all the time. I'm not good enough. I will stay with this mindset. That's so. What should we do, or what can we do? Or I don't know if you have any advice on this.
uh,
What's
uh,
your opinion?
well,
Because it's
yeah, I
just
can
not
give my opinion.
acknowledging it.
No, but the thing is, acknowledging it, or knowing it,
It's
or
very
having a
important.
name for it, is the first starting point. Because once you, before you have a name for it, you're just having these thoughts. I'm not good enough. They're gonna find out that I'm not good enough.
Hmm.
Uh, I went through this, like, oh, they accepted me into this PhD program. I don't know, something, there must have been some error. I don't think I belong here, or I deserve to be here. And these are just these this this it's just self-talk that's coming from something that you don't have a name for. And so you they can become real in a certain way for you, and you can kind of accept them as true, that you're not good
Hmm.
enough. Once you learn, for example, if you listen to this week's episode of Beyond the Thesis, and you understand what the imposter phenomenon is, what imposter feelings are, why they are there, then you can start saying, okay, and how everyone feels them, even the people you think are super sharp, super they're like super successful in their publishing, etc. They're going through their own imposter syndrome. It's just that you're not in their shoes, so you don't see that. You only see, it's like seeing someone's Instagram. You just see the nice pretty part.
Hmm. Yeah.
Knowing that it's something that happens, you know and it happens often to high performing people. And it was actually developed, the concept was developed, I think, it was in the concept, in the context of entrepreneurship, and specifically women in the entrepreneur in business. um, and it's something that comes from outside, and that you can block. Once you know it exists, you can say, okay, imposter syndrome, I know, I'm feeling you now, I see you're there, just let me do my thing, and then let's see if tomorrow you'll tell me the same thing. And so knowing it, knowing its name, or what it's called. And people, syndrome makes it feel like a disease, and people are steering away from that. So that's why Mark, for example, uses imposter phenomenon is the term he uses. Imposter
Okay.
feelings is another one. But one way to so the first step is knowing it exists, having a name for it, and then you can kind of set it aside and say, okay, you're just a thing that's coming from somewhere that I know exactly where, but that is trying to put me in this fight or flight situation, because I
Hmm.
feel there's something menacing out there. And often what's menacing is the unknown. So often you start, even someone who's super performing in one domain, then changes domains or changes positions, and then imposter syndrome arrives, because there's an unknown. Some people around you are doing it really well, and you just started, and you feel like, I'm kind of a greenhorn. I'm a white belt at this, and these people are black belts. And so it's often a thing of an phenomenon of comparison. You change spaces, and now you compare yourself to someone who's already been there for a while, and you feel less. um
And we want to start amazing, right? We
yeah,
don't want to start
exactly.
like we are not good enough. Well, we have to learn. It's a process. Once I learned,
Exactly.
I heard a psychologist talking about the first time she walked, she gave her first steps, because we forget that it's a process. We fell a lot when we were trying to
Oh
give
yeah.
our first steps, and nowadays we walk a lot. We can run. We don't even think about walking,
Exactly.
but we cannot start amazing. We have to start from the point we start and then learn from it and
Yeah.
grow and get better.
Yeah, and then so but now more practical ways of dealing with it. Having someone who's has this role of mentor for you, and who can, talk with
Hmm.
you from the outside and say, Look, you're having these feelings, but I've seen you evolve up to here, and let me tell you, you're going to be able to learn these skills and become good at this. So having mentorship, there's an aspect of luck. I try to, anytime I have a guest who talks about mentors, I try to see how they got their mentors, and often
Hmm.
it is by talking to more people, and there's an aspect of networking to it. But
Hmm.
the mentor mentee relationship, unless it's in a structured program, there is some luck to that, and some randomness. But having someone who has this mentor role can help. Also, discussing it with peers, maybe being in a PhD student group, but that has PhDs from different labs or different domains, where you have a kind of a safe space to discuss these things. And once you see that it's not just you feeling this, because when you feel it, you feel like, I am the imposter. They're gonna find me out, and then I'm gonna be. It's gonna be a shame. I'm gonna be in shame. Um, Once you see that, oh, they're also feeling. Oh, she's also feeling here. Then it kind of dissipates it, and you can move on, because you see, oh, you get
But we are
this.
not alone.
You're not alone. Everyone's going through it. So it's not a defect of mine, so I can I can launch myself into this new thing. Those would be
Eh,
the two things.
Well, and speaking of it, of the imposter syndrome, I don't know if you agree, but in PhD students, this is wow. Is
It's
so.
rampant.
It is. It is. We. Uh, I think it's mentally hard, because I think it's essentially, when a PhD we work for us basically, right?
Hmm.
And then if we do works well, amazing, we are great. The
Exactly.
problem is many times doesn't work.
Of course.
And in the beginning, we try to understand why it's not working, why this approach is not working, why these experiments are not working, why this protocol is not working. And we try to understand why, but then the amount of times that it keeps not working, then this makes us feel like this is not for me. I am doing everything wrong. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'll never be able to solve this. I shouldn't be
Hmm.
doing this pitch. And this is devastating because the amount of people that feel like this, it's in academia, in a PhD, it's incredibly high.
Yeah.
This is My husband is always saying that the psychologists should sponsor PhDs
Yeah.
because we need, in the academic world, we need psychologists to help us with our minds.
I know.
We are
Sure.
all And then I also believe that with this we tend to work even more. And I don't know if we work more if in a more efficient or effective way. We just get more tired and more tired because, okay, didn't work, I'm going to do it again, and I'll change this. Didn't work, okay, I'm going to do it again. I'll in going weekends and working until very late, not sleeping, not resting, not having any hobby. It's mentally destructive.
It is, and especially in life sciences. I don't. Did we talk about exactly what your research was? I don't think we did.
No,
But
no.
I know that myself, because there were mice that needed to, and there were cell lines, and all of these things that made us really spend more and more and more hours. If again, like you said, as soon as something doesn't work, then you say, okay, if I put more hours in, I'll break this problem. And then it's not true, because you're just running on on fumes, and you're not producing things that are good, or better than what you just did before. And then yeah, these feelings of being an imposter, or being or unworthy of whatever, then they start feeling real. and they start hurting your mental health for sure. um, One thing that I would like to see, because it's true that your PhD is, it's your project. You need, you're going to be the one with the name on the thesis. It needs to be you. But I think, I really believe that there needs to be some sort of um, village. You need to
Hmm.
have a safety net, or a social and yeah, a support network within the PhD. Be it by having, you have your PI, but you have a mentor or a committee. uh, you also, by maybe between students or postdocs, having it be less competitive and more collaborative.
Hmm.
Because it is, once you're in a very competitive space, or lab or institute, then you you end up feeling more and more alone, especially if there's failures. When there's a success, then everyone's happy for it. When you're failing alone. And that's something that, there's something
That's
in the
hard.
culture. It's hard.
In
It's
the
it is.
culture, yes. Uh, Having good supervisors is very important.
Of
And
course.
I'm actually really lucky because during my PhD I had an incredible support. I'm really thankful. And
Hmm.
I was just lucky. Oh, I applied for this PhD because I liked the topic. I
Hmm.
didn't know anything about university. I didn't know anything about people,
Hmm.
which is something that I don't advise people to do in the future.
Yeah.
Because in my case, I was lucky, but not everyone is. So if
Not
you want to do a
everyone.
PhD, if you want to keep working in science, just have a look around the people. Try to find people that have worked with them, and see if they like the culture. How is the culture?
Hmm.
How do they work? The environment, because it is extremely important.
Yeah. Yeah, and try to know what is the life of a PI. What do they do day to day?
A
So
lot.
if you're thinking of a PhD, if you're able to meet someone who's a PI, and ask what it is they do. Because often, and I'm thinking of myself, you go into this adventure, and it is it's a 3, 4, 5, depending, if you're in the UK it's shorter, but here it can go to 5, 6 years. It's
Mhm.
a huge chunk of your life, that a lot of us go into thinking, I want to be a professor. I just want to be in this stimulating environment of discovery. um, and then we don't know that there's all this admin, there's this grant writing, there's so much to they have so many hats that they have to put on during their day, that yeah, if you're able to meet someone and ask them what their day to day is before going into the PhD, do that. It's going to be very valuable for you to know if you do or if you don't want to do that.
And the work of a lecturer, a professor, a
Yeah.
PI, it's yeah, no, it's incredible. Like my supervisors, they work a lot, and I think they are a really good example of people that manage their time really well. They are really good leaders, in my opinion. Actually, there are some episodes that I'm recording with them
Oh,
about this
cool.
because I think they are a really good example for the scientific community to find money, to manage a lab, to manage a team. I think they are a really good example. So I think you will have in the future, in the near future, some nice episodes about this.
I'm looking forward to listening.
And so, David, you in the beginning you mentioned some of your tips for people that
Yes.
want to this transition from academia, and what the one that's stuck in my mind was basically prepare it before you finish your PhD,
Yeah, start
which
preparing
I
it.
haven't done. Start
Yeah.
preparing it.
Yeah.
And do you have any other advice, any other tip for people that want to transition, or they can find everything in your podcast?
Mm. Yeah,
Ooh.
well, there's so many episodes now that, but what let's maybe I'll talk about the podcast later if I think of something very specific. But one of the things that I can recommend is, there's a lot of at least here I see a lot of training offered to graduate students on science communication. take advantage of any of this type of training that you can. Actually, this is a subset of another piece of advice, which is when you're in graduate school, you have access to a bunch of university resources. Take advantage of as many of them as possible. For example, if you're struggling in terms of mental health, take advantage of the mental health services offered by university, because there's some
And don't be
universities.
ashamed of it. And don't be ashamed
Don't
of
be
it.
ashamed of it. It's that comes first, and then life. Your mental health comes first, and then the rest. But that it's dental health, etc. But thinking specifically of this idea of careers, one of the things that helps people a lot once they start putting themselves out there and saying I'm open for work, etc., is how well they're able to communicate what they did. So if there are science communication workshops offered, often they're optional. Well, opt in, because somehow there's going to be it's going to pay dividends for you, because not all the science communication is talking with the wider public. Some science communication is actually talking to deciders or to people hiring you. And once you've done that, already you were a step closer to feeling natural talking about what you did in your research in a not so academic way. So that's one. The other thing I'm seeing is these 3 minute thesis competitions.
Mm-hmm.
Participate in that. It's puts you outside of your comfort zone, especially if you're a little bit shy, but it's in a safe space, in a safe context. It's a great networking opportunity, because there's always people organizing these things, people who are not in your lab, who are not in your department, people who are maybe from other university entities and departments that somehow may uh, may be a stepping stone for you, or yeah, maybe someone who will be able to point you towards something that you didn't know. Plus, any public speaking again is going to bring you one step closer to feeling natural and finding your voice. Hi Inish. Finding your voice,
Yes.
uh, uh, to then be able to feel natural and to feel assured when you are talking about your research, about your PhD, with someone who's from outside academia. So these are two things that I'm seeing now, that I feel like these are great opportunities. Please don't miss them. Then, of course, anything career development that's offered, take them too. Or networking, like speed. There's some job speed dating, or
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
speed networking events. Any of those are really, you're not, because you can think you're wasting time. You're not. You're investing time if you
We
take
tend to
them.
think that, oh, I'm not working in the lab and I'm spending time preparing this and practice for it. Actually, during the PhD, many times we had to present our work in
There you go.
meetings, in small conferences. Many of my colleagues were always saying that I have so much work to do. I don't have time for this. I don't want to prepare this. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to go anywhere. And all my colleagues that went to international conferences, presented their work, they managed to find a job right after their PhD
Yeah,
because they met someone that they liked. Those persons needed someone to work with, and
yeah,
it was a perfect connection.
yeah. Again, that's a great point, because one of the things that I like, why you mentioned that, is first, all of what I said is important if you talk with people outside academia, but also if you're a good science communicator, it's going to be important if you stay in academia, because again,
Hmm.
these people who get grants and who have this ease of finding money for their research are people who are really good at storytelling, and at kind of selling their research to these types of structures and the um, funding entities. So none of this is just for non-academic jobs. It's for you as a young researcher. But I think it has great repercussions in your potential to quickly and successfully find what's going to your what your professional journey, professional path is going to be at least right after your PhD. Of course, then things evolve once you have your first one. There's, it's always a process. But yeah, great point. Presenting at conferences super important. Of course, at conferences you're talking to academics, so
It
there
can
isn't.
usually is, but you can go to different ones. There's plenty, but it's just one example of doing this networking and showing ourselves and showing what we do, because we also like what we do,
Yeah.
and being able to share this outside of our lab work.
Hmm.
It's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so basically, overall, what I can see there is that you kind of in your podcast kind of created a part of career guidance, right, and coaching, and this is what we were talking here
Hmm.
today. Do you Are you thinking of doing this more like on a professional level, so
Hmm.
helping people with their careers? Do you have
Hmm.
any of this in mind?
So yeah, actually, there's two things. I'm starting to work with um, groups or nonprofits that that are here in Quebec, to go to universities and teach graduate students courses around career readiness. That's something fairly new that is in the works, and it's going to be finalized soon. But I am now preparing after, it's kind of for the fifth year, kind of the fifth year celebration of Papa PhD. I
Mm.
am now preparing an offer, yes, of accompaniment or coaching. Coaching is because people train to be coaches, but the idea is I've been during these 5 years developing this ability to be
Yeah, I think that's your podcast,
to
basically.
active listening to yeah to do active listening around this question of careers after the PhD, and I want to offer that me behind access to me to people out there, and what I'm working on right now is kind of a small cohort workshop, which would be a few weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, part one-on-one, part in a group, where I'll be bringing you from and actually my idea was to work with people who are in their first job after academia and thinking, okay, I need to level up and I'm not finding my voice, I'm not being able to have conversations that give me access to this position that I feel is fits more what I want. And then the idea is going to be to work with me one on one, and then in a group, in kind of a 2 3 phases of one-on-one versus
Mm.
group work, and then to develop your capacity of storytelling based on what you did academically, but also in your more holistic view of your life, of, again, like you asked me at the beginning, why did you get into science, etc., etc. So yeah, it's interesting you ask me this now, because I'm working on it right now. Who knows that, if when this episode comes out, it's already ready. But yeah, it's I'm really, really eager to finally be able to be working with people,
Okay.
instead of just launching the podcast. And I see that people listen, but I really want to get to meet these people and help them directly. And it's in the works. I don't have a name for it yet. I should have a should find a
For
good
the
name for it.
service.
But yeah, it's going to
Okay,
be
that's amazing. Yeah.
becoming a guest. It's like if you become a guest of the show, but just just for you, and in a small group setting.
Um, yeah, and how people can find you? Can they can find you on LinkedIn? You have a
Yes.
website, because where it was where I found you as
Yeah.
well. Um,
So you
what's
can
an?
go on papaphd.com,
Mhm.
and the website also is going to be. with again with this offer, there's going to be some revamping of the visuals of how the site looks and the logo, etc. But it's going to stay the same. PapaPhD.com. You can find all the episodes there and some more information. You can also send suggestions of guests that you find are interesting. Then on LinkedIn, I'm super active and available on LinkedIn. That's, I think, the best one.
To
If you
contact
are,
you.
yeah, to contact me. If you are a Twitter X or an Instagram person, at Papa PhD Podcast is the same handle on both those platforms. You can also reach out to me there.
Okay. Okay. Papa PhD. Papa PhD is an amazing name. Incredible. I love it. Well, David, I think we reached the end of this episode. Thank you very
Mhm.
much for joining
Thank you.
today.
Thank you, Carlini. It was a pleasure. And yeah, I'm eager to hear your other episodes, and especially tell me when those with your PIs are out there, because it's always
I will.
great to hear. There's a lot of negativity out there, about academia, and I really love hearing good stories and good examples. So I'm looking forward to listening to that.
It is a good story. And when I decided to create this podcast, they were really happy. And every time I gave them suggestions, like, I would like to talk about this topic. And they were like, oh, we can help you. And I was
Oh
like,
wow,
I think that you are good for this episode. And they're like, let's do it. And I'm just in awe. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really grateful for them and
that's
for
amazing.
like the way that they help me and everyone that works with them.
That's
They are
great.
a really good example.
Well, I can't wait to hear those stories. And I'm super happy to see you continuing this podcasting adventure, because I'm sure you're gonna grow a lot from it and you're gonna enjoy it more and more.
Thank you. Well, so you know how to find Papa PhD now. Um, Stay tuned for the next episodes, and thank you very much for tuning in. Goodbye for now.
Bye. Thank you.